So with functions, we have what we call function notation. And function notation looks like this. It's f, a lot of times it's f. It could be another letter like G or H or N, but a lot of times they'll use f. F of x, and then they'll say equals, x squared. Let's say that. That would be an example of a function. So you've got this notation. It's pronounced f of x. It doesn't mean f times x. It means our function is going to be evaluated in terms of x. It means our variable is going to be x, okay? That's all that it means. So make sure you read the notation right, f of x, because you don't want to think it's multiplication. That would mean something else. And so like it's a name for the function. You could have another function like g of x equals x plus 3. That could be a function. And now we have two different functions. So one reason for the notation is when we always use y for everything, for all the outputs, then it gets confusing when you're talking about more than one function. So if we want to have two different functions, we want them to have two different names. So this would be the f function, and this would be the g function, we might say. And the notation is written that way. So this would be g of x, meaning that my function is going to be written in terms of x. Okay, so we have what are called independent and dependent variables. So the independent variable, that's the x, okay? So when it's in terms of x, we're saying that's the independent variable. The dependent variable is the f of x. So that's, and I think of them as input. So what are you putting in and what are you getting out? An output. So sometimes a lot of textbooks will do this. They'll have like a little machine here. So let's say your function is that g function. Let's say you have g of x. I'll write it inside g of x equals x plus 3. So then it's like a little machine, and we're going to be putting in x values. So maybe we're going to say x equals 5. And then we put the 5 in the machine, and in this case, we get an output of 8, right? Because 5 plus 3 is 8. So it's this idea of you put a number in, you evaluate it, and you get something out. But that would be an example of input, an independent variable. So there's the independent variable. And then here's the dependent variable, because the output's dependent on what you're putting in into the function. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So example 7. So we have a function. They give us a function right here. It says f of x equals 3x squared minus 2x plus 1. And now they want us to evaluate the function. So what they want us to do on part A is they say find f of 3. So in other words, that's going to be my x value right there. So f of 3 is going to equal. And now what I do is I follow this function along, and every place there's an x, and those are going to be in my way, but every place there's an x, I'm going to put a 3. Now I have to be careful when I write this to use proper notation. So it's going to be 3 times 3 squared minus 2 times 3 plus 1. Okay? And then they want us to actually figure out what that is. So we use the order of operations. It says to do exponent first. So 3 squared is 9. I'll do the multiplication next. And so now we'll do the multiplying, 27 minus 6 plus 1. And then remember, we work addition and subtraction left to right. So I have 21 plus 1, and I'm getting a 22. So f of 3 is equal to 22. We call this evaluating the function. So they gave us an input, we put it in. And you put it in for every x value there is, and then you evaluate it. Okay, so we have 2 more examples. So our next one, f of negative 1. So for that, we're going to put a negative 1 in here, here, and here. So we're going to have 3 times negative 1 squared minus 2 times negative 1 plus 1. So this is a good chance for us to practice our order of operations. Negative 1 squared is 1. And then we do exponents first, then we do, and you might be saying, well, what about parentheses? I thought parentheses came first. My parentheses, if you look at those in this problem, in this expression, there's nothing to do inside them. It's just indicating multiplication. So, there's no operation to work inside there, if you were wondering about that. Okay, so negative 1 squared, well, now that looks like a 2. See if we can get that out. Okay. Okay, so order of operations after parentheses or grouping, you're going to do exponents, then we're going to do multiplication and division. We don't have any division this time, and it works left to right, so I get a 3. Now, I'm going to have minus a negative 2, so plus 2 plus 1. And then I work my addition. 3 plus 2 is 5, 5 plus 1 is 6. And so I like to put at the end what I was evaluating, f of negative 1, and I got a 6. Okay, now this last one, a little bit different. It says find f of t. So I'm going to take t and put it in for x. So whatever you put in on the left, that's what you're putting in on the right. So we're going to get f of t is going to equal 3t squared minus 2t plus 1. And we're done. We don't know what t is, so you can't do any simplifying here. You don't have any like terms, so it's just that.